In 140 AD, a garrison of Roman soldiers marched from Rome all the way to northern Great Britain with their infamous logo of the Golden Eagle, and never to be heard from again. Hi everyone, I'm film critic Jeffrey K. Howard, and today we're going to go behind the scenes of the new action film, The Eagle. Hi, Channing.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Awesome film.
Thank you, sir.
Had a blast with it.
Thank you.
And I really like that you really come into your own in this role, don't you? Because, I mean,
appreciate that, man.
You had to do some serious acting, some serious action, and...
With some serious actors.
Yeah, with some serious actors, yeah.
I mean, you stand across from even Jamie Bell, much less like Donald Sutherland or Mark Strong. I mean, or Tahar. I mean, they're all at the top of their game. And, you know, when you look around and you can't figure out who's the weakest link, that is you. You know, and you're just like, oh, okay, all right. You know, we gotta try to step it up.
And you have a dual story going on. You'll have to restore your honor and your name to your Roman family, and then you have this bizarre friendship between a slave and his master.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jamie and I talked a lot about it, you know, and he's kind of lost his faith, and that's all I really have is my faith. And you know, we can end up meeting in the middle, you know, and I get to see probably what Rome is, you know, through Eska's eyes, you know, and that kind of makes me, you know, change my tune a little bit.
If I can't win back my family's honor by being a soldier, then I'll do it by finding a lost eagle.
You can't. No Roman can survive north of the wall alone. You can't.
Then I'll take Eska. I can use his knowledge. He speaks the language.
Eska?
Why not?
Because he's a Briton.
What were we talking about?
I have no idea. We were talking about the Eagle?
No, the Eagle. How miserable you were making this movie.
Pretty miserable.
Yes.
Pretty miserable.
I was miserable. I was feeling for you.
Right.
I saw the wind, I saw the elements, and I saw how dirty you were from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, were there some days you're like, I'm not coming out of my tent?
Some days the tent blew away. So there was nowhere to hide, really, you know. But Kevin MacDonald, the director of this film, you know, has a history in documentaries. I think that's the way he kind of approaches his films. He likes the films to feel visceral and real and authentic. You know, if it requires the Highlands of Scotland, we're going to go to the remote part of the Highlands of Scotland and do it.
But as an actor, you had to feel that.
Well, no, I mean, also I appreciate it because the story needs it. It requires it. You know, the whole story is based on the idea that this guy is going to go on this crazy mission, this suicide mission, with the enemy into this unknown frontier, which is incredibly dangerous and incredibly treacherous. And they're going to try and retrieve this thing that's going to restore his family's honor. You know, and to really feel like we're really in that time period, I feel like we did need to go to some of the most remote parts of the Highlands that we could find, and we did.
I was so excited about this movie.
Oh, great.
Because of watching your interview and your commitment to detail and historical accuracy.
Yes.
And I just have so much admiration for that, because you know in Hollywood, you know, who's going to notice on a military uniform that that's the wrong insignia or something like that? But watching all the craftsmen you brought together in this film, and you knew the story for the longest time, right?
Yes.
So it's been a long time coming.
You know, I read this book when I was a teenager, and it's a kind of classic in Britain. I don't think many people here in the States have read it, but it's a great adventure story. And I grew up in Scotland, and it's about a Roman soldier and his slave who go across Hadrian's Wall, which is the end of the Roman Empire, into the unknown. And it's kind of like a cowboy movie. That's what I see it as. It's a cowboy movie, except instead of cowboys, you got Romans. Instead of Indians, you've got sort of Celtic tribes people. But it was important for us to make a movie that went against the grain of what Hollywood is doing for the most part, which is huge CGI versions of Rome or of Greece or whatever, and fantasy elements. Whenever they do this kind of epic classical movie, it's always got full of fantasy. And I wanted to make a movie that says, no, it's more interesting to say this is what it was really like. And there's no CG. You're actually, you know, made to feel you know, this is how horrible it would have been to be in wet Scotland in the middle of winter when you just had a woolen cloak. It's really horrible.
Including for you and the crew.
For us and the crew, particularly for the actors, the poor actors.
Miserable. Yeah,
Miserable,
I saw the wind whipping and I saw the mud and I thought, wow, that's not a computer effect. Yeah, these
No,
guys are...
and but of course it makes great performances because, you know, when Channing throughout the latter part of this film is meant to be a character who is being broken down, who's being sort of almost being made deranged by being beaten up and the exertion he's having to go through. Well, he actually was having to go through that, and sort of, you know, the rain, going in cold rivers, walking up mountains, the kind of the hardship. Really good for the actors because it makes them feel you're actually in this.
Definitely had to go to a Roman boot camp, I would think, in this movie. Yeah,
that's what they called it too. It was Legionnaire boot camp, and it was really educational of why they did things and how they did things. The Romans were some of the most efficient fighters of all time.
So take me through a typical day of training for this role.
Wake up about 8. You leave about 8:30. You go to. Usually we would do. I think sword training first. We go and we would do about 3 to 4 hours of sword training, the choreography, and just basics, you know. And then after that, Jamie and I would go to horse training, and we'd ride for about 2 hours or 2 or 3 hours, and I would go and do chariot training, which didn't make it in the movie, but that was actually insanely scary and cool. And then we would go to boot camp, like Legionnaire camp, where I would do that for like an hour or so, and then we would do actual rehearsal for the film.
A lot of physical action in this.
Yeah.
A lot of preparation for it.
Tons. I've never ridden a horse before. Totally had to learn how to do that. You know, lots of fight training with the swords and stuff, figuring out all the sequences. I had to learn the language that my character speaks because he speaks that native language. And
learn to eat rat.
Learn to eat rats well.
That was gross.
Learn to survive Scotland in November.
How did you guys bond? Because early on, the chemistry had to work between you both, and you were going to carry most of the film. Yeah,
I mean, it's the dynamics of that relationship that kind of drive the movie, basically. I mean, I think the first time we meet my character, for example, I'm a guy who's got nothing left. I mean, he's got no family left. His culture's been wiped out. His tribe has been wiped out, and now he's enslaved by the very people who took that away from him. And I feel like in that ring, when Marcus kind of saves this guy's life and spares him from death, my character's like, why would you do that? I was kind of very willing to die, and then and that's where the relationship starts. It already starts on bad terms, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're also enemies. It's not like these guys get together and they're the best of friends, immediately. There's a lot of treachery that goes on in that relationship. There's a lot of mistrust and betrayal, and kind of feeling each other out. These guys are enemies, after all.
I just wanted to be in a tent the whole time, but you're out there half naked with the wind blowing, and it just looked miserable.
All the training in the world could not have prepared us for how unbelievably unforgiving it was going to be up there. It's just, even the people that live up there, they don't go out without, this thick of rubber on, and it's just insane that what we did. And the crew as well. I mean, it wasn't just me and Jamie. It was crew. I don't know how all the frames aren't just shaking, because I mean we were all just freezing up there.
But you actually had to create the seal people, right? That was the only thing in the movie that wasn't historically accurate.
Yeah.
You created an entire culture.
Exactly, and because nobody really knows what they know what the Romans were like. A lot of archaeology and a lot of books, obviously, but the tribes in Scotland, nobody really knows, because there's tiny little bits of evidence. We know they worshipped seals and sea eagles and that kind of thing. We know from some description that they painted their faces. So you take these few little things and you say, right, I want to create a real culture. What would actually, if you have the seals and you have the eagles and you have the painting of the faces, what else exists around that? And I didn't want them just to be a kind of like Indiana Jones like horrible tribe. I wanted them to feel, oh, there's some humanity to them. I understand this culture. So they're kind of a bit anthropological, and so we kind of spent a lot of time working out, what is their life, how do they subsist, and to create a kind of hopefully a rounded feel for those people.
I noticed, I don't know if it was on purpose, there was a transition you did where Channing was getting his face wiped by one of the seal villagers, and it went right to the horse.
Yes, that's a beautiful transition.
I saw it because it was wipe and a wipe. I thought, was that on purpose? Or?
Yeah, no, that's very much on purpose. That scene there with this old lady who happened to live in the little village near where we shot, and she came and was an extra, and she's an incredible, beautiful face, old, aged face with wrinkles, and Channing has been brutally treated, and he's now captive of this tribe, and he's made into a kind of slave, and you think that he's just going to be continue to be beaten up and that he's going to be treated, you know, horribly. But actually, this old woman, you know, gives him something to eat and gently wipes his face, and you see, oh, well, they're human beings too. They're, you know, they're doing what is part of their culture. Yes, they're brutal to him in some contexts, but in other ways they're quite nice. And I think that just makes it feel real. And then, so you see the gentleness of that, and then you go to the horse, and Channing is now a slave, and he's having to actually clean the horses like the slave would. So it's, yeah, it's just a nice transition.
Who has the eagle?
They say the SEAL people have it.
How do I find them?
He knows. He's Brigantes. They fought here.
Do you have a favorite moment in the film? Because the opening scene where you were doing the battle with all the shields up above, that was so exciting.
There's so many in this movie. I mean, the running down the river and stuff like that. But there was a moment in the movie that was just really sort of, it's really kind of telling. You know, we're out in front of the fort where we're going out and trying to save the men, and we got the defensive circle around the men, and we're losing the light, and it's one of the last things we're shooting for that day. And so Kevin was just like, he threw on new mags on each all the cameras. I can't remember if we had 2 or 3, and they just shot, and they just like hold the circle, and it was just melee. And a mag runs, I don't remember exactly how far it runs, but it runs about 7 to 10 minutes, I think. And we just fought. We just held the circle. I mean, it was just a grueling, slamming battle, you know, and every once in a while slashing, you know, close to somebody, and we were fall down tired after that. I mean, I don't know how these guys did it for weeks at a time.
But probably the most bizarre thing is that my mother's mother, my grandmother, her name was Eska.
No way.
No kidding.
That's a great name.
I thought I heard it just, she spells it E-S-K-A, which is like a Cherokee. I think it's an Indian name. So yeah, it carries over. But when your character's name Eska, I thought, wow. Yeah. There's the relationship right there.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's great.
Excellent job, man. I had a blast with it. Thanks so much.
Take care.